When Uranus entered Gemini on June 19th, 1774, the colonies were on the brink. By April 8th, 1775, when Uranus returned, the American Revolution had begun. Gemini rules local governance and communication networks. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, the silversmith's famous ride about approaching British troops, and the Committees of Correspondence. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, the pamphlet that galvanized colonial support for independence, were pure Uranus in Gemini phenomena. Here, rebellion took the form of declaration. Independence was not just fought for, it was articulated. The United States was born with Uranus in Gemini. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of July 7th to the 13th. We've got a big show in store for us here. Only 5 transits, but these 5 transits are highlighted by the full moon in Capricorn and Uranus's transit into Gemini. And Uranus's transit into Gemini, this feels like a big deal to me, and I have something that I want to read to you in a little bit, something that I've written that I'm going to put on my Substack, and I'm going to put my Substack link in the show notes because I've been writing some stuff and putting it on there. If you're signed up to my email list on the website, you should be getting the emails that I'm sending out. A few weeks ago, I wrote a piece called They Love the Problem, which talked about some of these outer planetary transits and how it was affecting, or how it's still affecting, all the immigration stuff. And then last week, I wrote a piece on the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune and in Aries, and looking at that from a historical perspective. This week, I'm going to be reading a piece that I wrote about Gemini transiting through, or Uranus transiting through Gemini, and what that means from a historical perspective and what that could mean for us moving forward. But before we go there, I want to make a couple announcements. First of all, I want to thank you for listening. If you're here listening, I really appreciate you listening and supporting this podcast, The Weekly Transit. If you are enjoying the content that we are creating here, then I ask you to subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple, hit that subscribe button. Rate us positively, 5 stars if that's the rating, 5 out of 5, that'd be cool. And leave a comment. Hopefully it's a favorable one, but I'm always happy to hear from you. I'm here to support and encourage and empower you on your journey through life, through understanding the planets and stars and their influence of life on Earth. Last week on the Weekly Transit, I had on Michaela Keller. She is the host of a new podcast called Life, styled by Michaela. She also has a popular Instagram account called Travel and Sparkle. She is a wonderful woman who has a rich background, somebody who really just rose through the corporate ranks and has become an entrepreneur. She is a world traveler. She is a business owner or invests in businesses, a real estate owner. She's a mother, a very inspiring and successful woman. So I encourage you to listen to that episode if you were not able to do so. The week before that, I had on Jean Watroba, another inspiring woman who wrote a book of poems called Pretend All Is Well. And then this week, I'm having on my friend and another inspiring woman. I love these women. You know, they're so open to coming on and discussing their story, so brave, so courageous to share their stories, to be vulnerable and intimate with me and the audience here, you, in sharing their stories and allowing me to reflect upon their astrological code. So this next week, I'm bringing on my friend Crystal Egger, who is a meteorologist. She used to be on the Weather Channel, as well as Channel 4 in LA. And now she owns her own company. She has a female-owned business with a partner, another female partner of hers, who she met at the Weather Channel. And their company is called Monarch. And they are hired by major corporations to forecast out the weather. You know, these, if you're shipping, millions of dollars worth of product, you know, you don't really want to rely upon the local news. You probably want to hire your own expert that can map things out in terms of shipping lanes. But I'll let Crystal get into that. You'll hear it in the conversation. But Crystal also just really opens up about her sobriety and, some of the trauma as a teenager in her family and then giving birth to her first daughter. What a harrowing story. Crystal is somebody that I've been friends with since college, and she's married to my good friend, and she is just an incredible woman. So I really hope that you tune in and enjoy my conversation with Crystal. I'm also going to be on this week twice with Delisa. Twice this week with Delisa. We're hitting up our normal time. You know, I was on with her all of June. I'm with her all of July. Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on her YouTube channel. So we're doing it again then, and I really hope that you're joining us and listening in. Having some really powerful conversations. Delisa has been so generous in just opening up her platform for me to share insight into the planets and stars and how our world is being shaped by what's going on with the planetary transits. And we're having some pretty intense and moving conversations. Like, I'm getting emotional in these conversations because it's just, there's a lot happening in the world right now. So if you're interested in hearing about the reflections of what's going on in the world and what that means astrologically, I really encourage you to tune in to Delisa's YouTube channel. And the link to last week's episode is always in the show notes. The link for the next week's episodes I send out in an email. So I'll be sending that out probably on Sunday, Monday. But then on Wednesday, I'm going to be on with Delisa again on her Facebook channel because she's doing a live on her Facebook to celebrate 100 friends or followers or whatever it's called on Facebook, but she's up to 100,000. So in celebrating that milestone, she's doing a live on Facebook, And so she's invited me to join her on Facebook to talk astrology and all these outer planets that are transiting into new signs like Uranus in Gemini, of course, Pluto's in Aquarius, and Neptune and Saturn are in Aries. And what are the effects of what that's having on us here on Earth? I was also featured in a couple of, what's it called? I would say internet websites. They're like websites that I guess interview normal people or like business people or entrepreneurs. One's called Canvas Rebel and the other one's called Shout Out SoCal. So if you're interested in hearing more about me and my story, how I became an astrologer or why I do what I do, I'll put those links in the show notes and probably put it in the email this week. And I invite you to take a read if you're so interested. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the show where we're going to talk about 5 transits, including Uranus in Gemini and the full moon in Capricorn. So Uranus in Gemini. Every 84 years, Uranus, the planet of upheaval, innovation, and rebellion, returns to Gemini, the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins and ruled by Mercury, the messenger of the gods. This is the first transit of the week. Mercury is the guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, coordination, the god of merchants and thieves. So think about that. We've got Uranus, the planet of revolution, in the sign that's ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication. So a revolution to communication. Gemini is the sign of duality. It's symbolized by the twins. So it's a sign of duality, but also rapid exchange of information. Uranus doesn't gently pass through this realm, it electrifies it. Like a lightning rod through the sky, this transit signals revolutions of mind and machinery, of politics and print, of people and power. Uranus in Gemini brings seismic shifts to how humanity thinks, speaks, and connects. It births revolutions not only in how we talk to or listen to each other, but in how we move, invent, fight, and share ideas. It breaks stagnant patterns and ushers in entirely new paradigms of consciousness, often at breakneck speed. This Monday, July 7th, Uranus enters Gemini, where it will transit until November 7th. So all of July, from July 7th, all of August, September, October, and then the first 7 days of November. Then it transits back into Taurus and comes back to Gemini on April 25th, 2026, where it will be until May 22nd, 2033. To understand what we're about to experience, we need to look at the echoes of history. The previous times Uranus entered Gemini and the world turned on its axis. I went back almost 800 years. When Uranus entered Gemini on July 28th, 1271, the world stood on the edge of spiritual and geographical expansion. That same year, a young Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant and explorer, began his legendary journey along the Silk Road to Kublai Khan's court, the mongrel emperor who ruled China and much of Asia. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, had established the Yuan dynasty, becoming the first non-Chinese ruler to control all of China. It was the dawn of globalization. Gemini's love for trade. Mercury, the god of merchants and thieves. And you have Marco Polo, a merchant, traveling to meet Kublai Khan to open up a trade passageway from Asia to Europe. This was also the era of Thomas Aquinas, the influential medieval philosopher and theologian who was working on his synthesis of classical philosophy with Christian theology in his Summa Theologica, bringing logic and faith in archetypal Gemini act. This was also the era when Thomas Aquinas, the influential medieval philosopher and theologian, was working on his synthesis of classical philosophy with Christian theology in his Summa Theologica, bridging logic and faith, an archetypal Gemini act. Aquinas continued this revolutionary intellectual work throughout the next Uranus and Gemini period, until his death in 1274. Uranus in Gemini sparks the fusion of old truths with new ways of thinking. Uranus entered Gemini again on July 1st, 1355, when the world was still reeling from the devastation of the Black Death, the catastrophic plague that killed 1/3 of Europe's population between 1347 to 1351. Isn't that interesting? So, 4 years before Uranus transited into Gemini was the end of the Black Death. 4 years before Uranus transited into Gemini this time was COVID. So both the Black Death and COVID occurred while Uranus was in Taurus. So by the time Uranus moved into Gemini, the aftermath demanded revolutionary new ways of thinking and communicating. Between 1356 and 62, Europe saw the collapse of feudal labor systems. This is where medieval agricultural systems where peasants worked land owned by nobles in exchange for protection. There seems to be an interesting drawing of the line here where we have so many immigrants working the fields in the United States, but yet being terrorized by ICE to be sent back. Very strange, but a connection nonetheless. There was a rise in literacy, the first glimmers of what would become the Renaissance. By the time Uranus entered Gemini on April 18th, 1356, massive social upheaval had created space for revolutionary movements of thought and communication. New universities were being founded, and movable type printing, already well established in China for over 300 years, was influencing trade and scholarship networks that connected East and West. When Uranus entered Gemini for the third time during this period, December 15th, 1362, it marked a critical turning point in reshaping European consciousness. From superstition to science, from silence to scholarship. When Uranus entered Gemini on June 10th, 1439, and again decisively on March 29th, 1440, two monumental communication revolutions were unfolding simultaneously. Johannes Gutenberg, the German goldsmith, was perfecting his printing press in Strasbourg during this exact period, unveiling what he mysteriously called Inventur and Kunst, enterprise and art. This was in 1440. Court records from 1439 show evidence of his types, metal inventory, and type molds, the mechanical foundations of a revolution that would democratize knowledge itself. At the same time, the Council of Ferrara, Florence, was attempting to bridge the great schism between Eastern and Western Christianity. On July 6, 1439, the Decree of Union was proclaimed, representing the most serious medieval effort to reunite Orthodox and Catholic churches through dialogue and negotiation. This gathering brought together not only the Pope and Western bishops, but also Byzantine Emperor John VIII and the Patriarch of Constantinople, creating an unprecedented forum of theological communication across ancient divides. Both events embodied Uranus in Gemini's essence, revolutionary communication and break down barriers and transform how ideas travel. Gutenberg's press would soon spread Protestant ideas across Europe at lightning speed, while the Council's attempt at religious unity, though ultimately short-lived, demonstrated the power of structured dialogue to bridge seemingly impossible theological differences. The printing press and papal decree both sought to create new channels for sacred truth and flow. On May 23rd, 1523, Uranus re-entered Gemini, and the Protestant Reformation was already transforming Europe. By May 3rd, 1524, when Uranus settled firmly into Gemini, the movement was in full swing. Martin Luther, the German monk who challenged Catholic Church practices, had his ideas printed and circulated. Thanks to the printing press, one of the most Uranus in Gemini inventions in human history. Gemini governs language and literacy. Uranus revolutionizes whatever it touches. Together they demolished the monopoly of the Catholic Church over spiritual knowledge. For the first time, ordinary people could read the Bible in their native tongue. This was not just a religious revolution, it was an epistemic one. The Reformation was the democratization of truth. On May 15th, 1607, Uranus entered Gemini as Jamestown, founded one day earlier on May 14th, became the first permanent English settlement in North America. The age of colonial expansion was underway, redefining identity, territory, and human rights across the globe. During this same period, Galileo Galilei, the Italian astronomer and physicist, was turning his telescope to the stars. The heavens were no longer the realm of myth. They were becoming measurable. Uranus in Gemini strips away dogma and reveals what is observable, even if it overturns sacred beliefs. Uranus entered Gemini again on July 9th, 1690, and then for a longer stretch beginning on April 27th, 1691. This was the core of Enlightenment. John Locke, the English philosopher whose ideas profoundly influenced modern democracy, published his 2 treatises of government in 1689, challenging divine right monarchy and laying the foundation for liberal democracy. The scientific method was being refined, and newspapers were spreading across Europe. Gemini is the town crier. Uranus is the radical. This was a revolution not of guns, but of ideas. When Uranus entered Gemini on June 19th, 1774, the colonies were on the brink. By April 8th, 1775, when Uranus returned, the American Revolution had begun. Gemini rules local governance and communication networks. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, the silversmith's famous ride about approaching British troops, and the committees of correspondence. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, the pamphlet that galvanized colonial support for independence, were pure Uranus in Gemini phenomena. Here, rebellion took the form of declaration. Independence was not just fought for, it was articulated. The United States was born with Uranus in Gemini. Its constitution was a written testament to Gemini's intellectual rigor and Uranus's revolutionary spirit. Uranus entered Gemini on June 1st, 1858, and again more decisively on March 13th, 1859. In this window, Abraham Lincoln debated Stephen Douglas, the Illinois senator who advocated for popular sovereignty on slavery. Telegraph lines crisscrossed the nation, and the U.S. descended into civil war. By June 26, 1865, when Uranus left Gemini, slavery was abolished, Lincoln was assassinated, and the modern industrial age was dawning. The telegraph, a Gemini-style innovation, allowed Lincoln to command armies from afar, transforming military communication forever. Gemini and Uranus together insist, change the channel, or the channel will change you. On August 7th, 1941, and again on May 15th, 1942, Uranus entered Gemini just as World War II engulfed the globe. Gemini rules messaging. Uranus rules technology. This was the age of wartime propaganda, encrypted messages, and the birth of modern computing. Alan Turing, the British mathematician and cryptanalyst, broke the Nazi Enigma code and laid the groundwork for artificial intelligence. Television entered American homes. The world was becoming smaller and faster and more divided. The Cold War began when Uranus was in Gemini. And as Gemini would have it, two poles emerged: East versus West, capitalism versus communism. The atomic age was Gemini's twin paradox: communication and annihilation. Now, Uranus is coming back to Gemini on Monday, July 7th, where it will enter for a brief visit before settling in for the long haul on April 25th, 2026. What can we expect during this time period? A reinvention of language, media, and the human nervous system. AI will not just be a tool, it will be a partner, a threat, a teacher. The written word may evolve beyond keyboards. Truth itself may become a contested landscape. Expect revolutions in digital communication and AI interfaces, transportation. Could there be flying cars or teleportation like Star Trek? Revolution in educational systems, censorship, free speech, and the nature of truth. Dual citizenship, hybrid identities, and neurodivergent leadership. Uranus in Gemini is an upgrade of the human operating system, but not without breakdowns, conflict, and paradigm death. As with every cycle, we must ask yourself, what am I willing to learn? What am I willing to unlearn? And what ideas am I ready to transform for the world? Uranus in Gemini says the revolution will be spoken and rewritten and hacked. The winds are shifting. The signal is changing. Are you ready to tune in? And that's my essay on Uranus and Gemini. There's a lot to be excited about. Of course, there's concern. With every major transit, there's concern. I'll always remember the day that Uranus transited into Taurus. It was the beginning of my relationship with Gabriella. I was staying over at her house that night, one of the first nights that we had spent together. And there was a thunderstorm in Los Angeles. Rarely are there thunderstorms in Los Angeles, like thunder and lightning and crackling. And I was like, wow, what an entry for Uranus in Gemini, or in Taurus. I mean, what an entry for Uranus in Taurus. When you go back to, what was going on in your life during that period, go back to, it was March of 2019. No, yeah. It was March of 2019. It was March 6th. It was the night of March 6th, 2019. Where were you on March 6th, 2019? What was your life like back then? Think about how much has changed since March 6th, 2019. So much has changed. And so much is going to change between July 7th to May of 2033. The more that you're clinging to the way things have always been, the more frustrated and flustered you may be during this period. This period is a revolution of the mind. So if your mind is not going through a revolution, if you aren't challenging yourself to see things and differently, to think differently, if you're not challenging yourself to be open for new ideas, open to receive new ideas, then this could be a challenging period for you. If you were born with key planets or points in your astrological code that are in Virgo or Pisces, you could be rattled during this period. And that doesn't mean if you're just a Pisces sun or a Virgo sun, if you were born with any planet in Virgo or Pisces. When you think about who was born with Pluto in Virgo, everyone who was born between 1957 and 1972, if you were born during that period, between 1957 and 1972, you're going to go through some form of revolution in terms of your health and daily life. So no one's getting out of this clean unless you're working with the energy. If you're looking for support and guidance on how to navigate this Uranus in Gemini transit specific to your astrological code, I encourage you to contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. The second transit of the week involves Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, also transiting through Gemini, forming a trine with Pluto, retrograde in Aquarius. Pluto's the god of death, lord of the underworld, the planet of transformation. Aquarius is the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bearer. This is an air-air connection which is supporting you in transforming how you relate to others within the social construct, the group, the club, the organization, the community. This is encouraging you to open your mind and to be curious about what you can learn from others. This transit occurs from Saturday to Tuesday, July 5th to the 8th, with the exact trine occurring the same day that Uranus transits into Gemini, Monday, July 7th. So what can you learn from those in your community? What can you learn from those that you're in relationship with? What are you curious about? What questions would you like to ask? The third transit of the week is the full moon in Capricorn, which occurs on Thursday, July 10th at 1:37 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time. The full moon is a release. It's the exhale. The new moon, the inhale. The inhale of the new moon was setting our intentions to reflect upon our past and to be kind, caring, and nurturing to ourselves and what we find. The full moon is going to support us along that path. It's going to support us along that path because the full moon is in Capricorn, and Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign symbolized by the goat and ruled by Saturn, the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, and authority. What is weighing you down right now? In what ways are you being hard on yourself? Are you punishing yourself in any way? The full moon in Capricorn is saying, unbound yourself from these chains. Take the weight off of your shoulders. Send that boulder down the mountain. Don't hit anyone on the way. But This is about alleviating the weight, the pressure that you're putting on yourself. We're going through a lot of changes right now. And if you're not being kind to yourself during these changes, it's going to be harder to make these inevitable changes. There's radical shifting happening in the world right now. So many people are barely hanging on by a thread. In order to get a grip, you've got to take the pressure off of yourself. Release yourself from the burdens of responsibility, of missed expectations. Trust that you have done the best that you could do. Maybe there are moments where you felt like you could have given a greater effort. Maybe that's true. But now's the time to forgive and to be kind to yourself. So in what ways are you being hard on yourself? In what ways are you punishing yourself? The full moon in Capricorn encourages you to release the burdens and replace them with kindness towards yourself so that you can be kind to others. The fourth transit of the week is the Sun in Cancer, which forms a trine, a supportive aspect with the North Node in Pisces. The Sun is the giver of light, life, and vitality. Cancer is the cardinal water sign symbolized by the crab and ruled by the moon. The North Node is the soul's purpose, and Pisces is the mutable water sign symbolized by the fish, ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, planets that represent faith. This trine is occurring from Thursday to Saturday, July 10th to the 12th, with the exact trine occurring on Friday, July 11th. So this is happening right along with the full moon in Capricorn. And of course, if you're curious to learn how the next lunar cycle is going to be affecting you directly when we're talking about the new moon in Leo and the full moon in Aquarius, I encourage you to enroll in my moon cycle classes at theweeklytransit.com. But the support of the North Node in Pisces, which is aligning with this full moon, the Sun in Cancer, the moon in Capricorn, it's bringing that element of compassion. So when you think of the burdens that you're carrying, those burdens are most likely, I imagine, rooted in guilt, shame, regret, blame. This is an opportunity to forgive yourself for that, so you can integrate those thought patterns and memories with understanding and love, in recognition that you've learned from these experiences, and through learning you have grown. And moving forward, you will make different choices than the choices you made in the past that you may regret today. But you can't make different choices today if you're still blaming yourself for the past, if you're still punishing yourself for the past, if you still feel guilt, shame, or regret for what you did in the past. It's through that forgiveness and compassion for yourself, empathy for others who are involved in the circumstances, that you're signaling to the universe that you're ready for a new experience. And through those new experiences, when met with experiences that echo your story from the past, you will choose differently than you chose then. The final transit of the week, Saturn, retrograde in Aries. So speaking of the past, here we go. Saturn retrograde. So last week was Neptune retrograde. This week, Saturn retrograde. The planet of authority and responsibility transiting backwards through Aries and then into Pisces. This retrograde transit begins on Saturday, July 12th and continues until November 27th. Now, Saturn entered its retrograde shadow on April 5th of this year. It transits retrograde back into Pisces on September 1st. On November 27th, Saturn will be at 25 degrees and 2 minutes in Pisces, exactly where it was on April 5th. And then on March 2nd of next year, Saturn will be exactly where it is on July 12th, 1 degree and 56 minutes. That's when it exits its retrograde shadow. Aries is the cardinal fire sign symbolized by the ram and ruled by Mars, the god of war. If you're not taking responsibility for who you are, then you will be at war with yourself. Part of taking responsibility for who you are is recognizing where you are being too hard on yourself, where you are punishing yourself. Acknowledge that this is who I am, this is what I did. I wish I had done something differently, but I don't need to punish myself anymore. Saturn, retrograde in Aries, is encouraging you to take responsibility for the love that you deserve. The love that you deserve to give yourself. When it transits back into Pisces, we're going to go deep into the unconscious again. And we're going to have that real look. We're going to take that real look of what's going on in there, where the fantasies become reality. In order to move into that water of Pisces in a manner that feels more supportive, we've got to take responsibility for the love that we deserve to give ourselves. And if you think that you don't deserve any love, that is where the full moon in Capricorn comes in and saying, release the pain and suffering that you're putting on yourself. Free yourself of the guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame. Acknowledge what you did or who you were, and love yourself through that. It's so much easier said than done. It's work. Saturn represents work, commitment. Saturn in Aries is establishing your commitment to yourself and acknowledging that I did something that I regret, that I'm ashamed of, that I've been punishing myself for, and I don't know how to forgive myself. But I'm willing to do the work to figure it out. I'm willing to do the work to courageously face who I am with love, as difficult as that assignment may be. So I hope this is helpful to you. It's felt like kind of a heavy episode, but to me, it's also very inspiring. There is so much opportunity that is going to come through these next few months. What that is yet to be defined. But if you're doing the work to love yourself, which is not easy, if you're committing to releasing the suffering that you're putting on yourself, if you're open to learning new ideas, different perspectives, and engaging with a variety of people, you're going to thrive in these next few months. I look forward to hearing all about it. I'm honored to be here with you, and I'm grateful for your time and commitment to receiving the information that we're sharing through the weekly transit. Wishing you all the best, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the weekly transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.